What is up? What is up, everybody? Welcome. Sorry for the slightly delayed start, but welcome to another episode of the Insomniacs Livestream with me, Dr. Andrew Kim. I'm a board certified psychiatrist. For all of you subscribers, for those of you who have been following me on my YouTube channel, and for those who regularly tune in to the Tuesday night and Saturday night, 10:30 p.m. Central, 11:30 p.m. Eastern, Insomniacs Livestream, which is this. I appreciate you guys. We have several regular listeners. Our following is growing a little bit, and as you can see, I still haven't had my nightly coffee at this late hour, which I'm having right now. But let's get into it. In terms of today's episode, we're going to cover a few things. Number one, we're going to talk a little bit about some practical prescription cost tips, how to troubleshoot some prescription problems at the pharmacy, denials, reasons for those denials, and how to try to navigate them. And I think this will be helpful and applicable whether you have insurance or whether you do not, or you have crap insurance, good insurance. Just a few practical tips. I know I'm not going to be able to solve everyone's issues, but at least a few tips that we can share to help each other out. And maybe you have some tips I'm not aware of, and I'm all game to learn more so I can help my own patients with this. We'll also talk about very briefly, it's not even me trying to educate or teach something. I really want to hear from you, the listeners, about the concept of catastrophic health insurance. Should our country move towards having insurance plans for health insurance mimic what we have for home insurance, car insurance, almost more of a catastrophic coverage model in order to reduce costs? And what would be your concerns or interest or intrigue about that type of plan? Because that has gained a lot of more attention, I guess, after the United Healthcare CEO shooting and murder that occurred. So we'll talk about that briefly. And then with what remaining time we have left, yes, I know some of you are tuning in today just specifically for this topic, but that's why I'm going to save it to the end to make you guys listen to the rest of this, or else I will also get derailed and get tangential. We will have part 2 of some more comments about my reaction to the Mel Gibson guest appearance on the Joe Rogan Experience, or the Joe Rogan podcast. It's funny because the last live stream I have has the most views I've had on a live stream. And of course it gets demonetized and flagged, and it's fascinating. I've gotten a lot of hate email, people reaching out saying nasty things, hateful things, saying I'm a moron, I'm an idiot, I'm part of the pharma industrial complex trying to suppress cures for cancer, and I'm part of the problem. That this Dr. Makis, I don't even know how to pronounce his name, is basically the second coming of Jesus Christ, and I'm the person getting in the way. And how dare I question the scientific validity, even though I never said these are not ever going to be helpful. I simply said we need to be skeptical, keep an open mind about the things that Mel Gibson said on the Rogan podcast about febendazole and methylene blue, ivermectin. Go back and listen. Did I ever say that these will always be pointless? There's never going to be utility. I simply said, hey, I think we need to slow our roll, get more evidence about these things, and I think we should be a little skeptical about people who are over promoting and overselling it. So if we have time, we'll get into the reaction to the reactions, and maybe I'll even share some of the hate mail and the hate comments if I can have enough energy to queue up some of these graphics and put them up. But yeah, it's fascinating, and sadly, I'm still going to stand by my opinion. There are unfortunately sad grifters that are capitalizing on the anti-pharma complex, that are capitalizing off of suffering and desperation, and they are predatory. I'm going to stand by it. I'm not going to back down, even with all the hate emails and hate comments I've received. Predatory practices bother me. Again, I literally don't care. I have no skin in the game whether ivermectin or febendazole end up actually having, helpful properties that can actually treat certain cancers. I would be happy if we have more options for those things. And we'll get into that too. Just this whole concept of physicians wanting to suppress cures. It's one of the most ridiculous fallback defense mechanisms that people who want to believe in grifts, or false oversells, they always fall back on that argument. Okay. And we'll talk about that as well. But like I said, I'm not opposed to having options for patients. Why would I care? Why would I want patients to not have more options? I just don't want to see people taken advantage of. I don't want to see grifters selling false hope and shattering those hopes. There's enough suffering that people have to go through for themselves and their loved ones when they're dealing with cancer and other chronic illnesses and diseases. So we'll get into it. First, though, like I said, see right there, I can get sidetracked. I can get derailed. We can talk 2 hours with me blabbing about that topic. So first, let's get into one of the earlier topics. Like I said, navigating prescriptions and some prescription problems. Okay, so let's go through it. So again, whether you have insurance, you don't have insurance, if you have good insurance, bad insurance, there may be some practical tips to help you just advocate for yourself, to help you become more proactive in troubleshooting problems at the pharmacy and not just putting up your shoulders saying, okay, I guess this is the price I have to pay, or my meds aren't covered. Hey, what's up, Musics? Musics, thanks for joining. Hope you're well as well. So we're first diving into some prescription tips, and then we're going to eventually make our way to further commentary about the whole febendazole, Dr. William Mackus craze. So if you want to stick around for a few minutes, we'll dive into that probably in 10 minutes, 15 minutes. So, okay, so it's a pretty short list, but let's start with you actually have insurance. All right, you get a prescription sent by your physician, your nurse practitioner to the local pharmacy, Walgreens, CVS, Walmart, Costco, whatever it is. You go to pick it up, and then you get a response from the pharmacist or the pharmacy tech that says, hey, sorry, this medication, we can't fill this for you right now. And you say, how come? And there may be a variety of reasons. And sometimes you may not get a very proactive response. You may simply get an answer from the pharmacy or the pharmacy tech that says, sorry, it's just not covered. It won't be filled. You should be proactive and say, why? I actually need a more specific answer. And I can't say, and to be fair, I'm not going to say that the pharmacist or pharmacy tech will always know 100% of the time, but typically, I would say more times than not, they should be able to give you a more specific reason. And let's go through some of those reasons right now. Again, more for the sake of your education, advocacy. Number one, I know this sounds crazy, but you may get a prescription denied and not fillable, or asking you to pay the full cash price because of something called a quantity limit. Okay. Your insurance may be so stringent, they may say you can only fill X amount of tablets or capsules per month. For example, it's not uncommon that a patient of mine will come back and say, hey, my insurance will only allow me to have 30 tablets this month or 30 capsules this month, 1 month at a time. And it's frustrating because sometimes, for the sake of convenience, meaning like maybe I don't want the patient to have to go back and forth to the pharmacy twice, right? And I'll say, hey, I'm gonna, just to be conservative, I'm gonna start you on 30 milligrams of duloxetine, which is generic Cymbalta. And I want you to take that for about a week. And if you don't, if you don't have too many side effects, you don't have too much nausea, sexual side effects, etc., let's have you increase that by day number 8 to 60 milligrams, because 60 milligrams is the goal dose. So I may only need that patient to take the 30 milligrams, the starting dose, for about 1 week, and then double it by the 8th day. Now, unfortunately, it comes as a capsule. And so I can't give them the higher strength and have them split it. So I'll say, I'm going to give you 60 capsules just to be on the safe side. In the first week, you're going to need 1 a day. From there on, you're going to need 2 a day. And then we'll see each other in a few weeks. But then, like I said, sometimes the insurance is so stringent, they'll say, no, we can only dispense 30, and they'll deny it. And the patient will be confused until we figure out, meaning the patient and I, that that's the problem. And then I'll say, look, your insurance is a hassle. We're going to just prescribe you the 30 of the 30s. And then later, as you're running out, I'll just re-prescribe the 60 milligrams. But now, you're going to have to go back multiple times. You're going to have 2 separate prescriptions. It's a headache. But that's how dumb our insurance comes in. And I get it. On one hand, I'm not obtuse. You don't want a doctor saying, here's 300 capsules all at once, pointlessly, right? But again, most doctors aren't like that. Most doctors are going to use their common sense and give you what you need to cover X amount of time. but it could be as basic as that. And if I had simply just written it as 30 capsules for 30 days without trying to be savvy and helpful to my patient, it would be covered. So it could be something as basic as that. But if you don't ask, you may get a simple response from a pharmacy tech or pharmacist to say, just, it's not covered. And you may misinterpret that and say, this is my only option then for me to pay cash, which many of my patients will end up doing unless I give them this kind of proactive education. So make sure it's just not simply a quantity limit. And if you simply change the quantity to be within the allowed amount per month, it may be covered. Okay, something as basic as that. Another common phenomenon is again, stupid. I'm going to preface it by saying stupid, but your insurance company may simply want you to take a different version of the same medication. And the most common example I can give you in the field of psychiatry is this. It's not uncommon that patients take 60 milligrams of fluoxetine, which is generic Prozac. There actually exists a 60 milligram tablet. Very convenient. You take one tablet, you get the dose that you're supposed to take, 60 milligrams. But most insurances, I will say most American insurances will not cover that. And they will say you need to take either 3 20 milligram capsules or 1 40 milligram and 1 20 milligram capsules, meaning multiple capsules at once, rather than the single simplistic 60 milligram tablet. And essentially, it comes down to cost. It costs more for them to purchase or pay for and cover the cost of the tablets that come as convenient 60 milligram tablets versus the cost of them covering the capsules, which are cheaper. So basically, we have to follow the whims of the insurance industry. And instead of me simplistically giving my patient a 60 milligram tablet, they want you to take three 20 milligram capsules or a 40 and a 20 separately to add up to 60. And again, if you as a patient don't understand this insanity that I just described, and all you hear from the pharmacy is it's not covered, you may think to yourself in panic mode, well, what's my option? I better pay cash, right? And so again, it's very important to just ask that follow-up question. Why? Why is it not covered? Can you give me more insight? And hopefully they can give you this clarity. And they may say, hey, look, have your doctor submit it as the capsules instead of the tablets. You may need to take multiple capsules to add up to 60 instead of the single. It could be as basic as that. I know that sounds terribly dumb, but yes, our healthcare system is terribly dumb. Correct. Confirmation. I'm telling you right now, that is absolutely correct. This is the insanity I talk to my patients about. We spend several minutes per visit navigating this kind of stuff so I can prepare them for the insanity when they go to the pharmacy to save them some grief. Usually I can cut it off at the pass like this 9 out of 10 times, but there's always still some weird quirk, even after 13 years of practice, that I haven't memorized or some new twist, and it catches us by surprise. So quantity limits, literally different versions of the same med, but you need to prescribe the right version. Okay, those are, I would say, the more readily troubleshot kind of, the ones that you can troubleshoot more readily and easily. Now, what are some of the more challenging ones that are still ones you can troubleshoot, but it's going to take more effort and more than likely not something you're going to be able to handle immediately, like right there at the pharmacy or with a quick phone call. So you may literally get a problem with coverage, cost, or flat out denial if your doctor is out of network. So again, if you have insurance, they are out of network. Some are so stringent that they won't even cover an out of network prescription. Some don't care who prescribed it as long as you have a prescription, but some will say if the doctor who prescribed this for you is not in your insurance network, either they may not cover all of it or they may just deny it altogether. The most egregious of these is Medicaid. So for those of you who are not living here in the United States, as I'm surprised by how many international viewers I get, Medicaid is just referring to state-funded insurance. All 50 states have their own form of Medicaid, or state-funded or state-subsidized healthcare for those who don't have commercial insurances, basically. And it's crazy because oftentimes, right, these are going to be folks who are the most in need from a fiscal or economic standpoint. And what can happen is the following. Just follow the logic here. It's worth listening to this insanity of this anecdote, right? This is something that happened literally within the past week. I had a patient. I have 51 licenses. I'm insane. I have 51 licenses. I have a license for every state in the United States and Washington, D.C. The paperwork is insanity to even keep up with that, to renew my license. I have 51 licenses. Okay. I can practice anywhere in the US with over telehealth. Now, here's the thing. I'm not enrolled in 51 Medicaid programs, though. That's separate paperwork. Not only would I need to get 51 licenses, I would need to enroll myself in every state's Medicaid program to be considered in network for Medicaid. I'm only enrolled in a few Medicaid programs. Okay. Now, I had a patient where I sent them a prescription of a antidepressant that costs about $10 cash per month. Even if you had no insurance, $10 cash. Okay. They went to the pharmacy. Pharmacy said, hey, this guy, this Dr. Kim, he's not in your Medicaid network. He's not in Minnesota's Medicaid network. And I'm not. And they said to the patient, you can't fill this here. We can't fill this because Dr. Kim is not in Minnesota Medicaid. And because of that, you can't fill this prescription. So I called the patient and I said, and the pharmacy, and I said, I talked to both of them. I said, well, I asked the patient, hey, I know money is money. And right now in America, money is tight. But can you, right now, for the sake of convenience and not getting hassled and not delaying your care, can you pay cash for, that prescription, the $10 prescription? And they said, yeah, they're like, I can afford $10 this time until we sort this out. I said, okay. So, I said to the pharmacist, hey, you know what? Can we just have you not process it through insurance? Can you just charge them the retail $10, $10 before taxes, so whatever, $11 total with tax? Can you charge that this time until we sort this out? Pharmacist said, no, can't do that. I said, how come? And they said, well, because we now know that they have Medicaid, we can't do that. It's our policy, and we are worried that in the case of a Medicaid audit, if we were ever audited, they would view us as having predatory practices. And I said, what do you mean by that? And they said, well, if they were able to use their Medicaid, and if you were a Medicaid enrolled doctor, this would be a $2 copay. They would have to pay $2. And us charging them $10 would be viewed as a predatory practice, and we don't want to be in hot water. I said, okay. I said, that makes sense. So the rules and your policies are there for nobility and protection of the consumer. Okay, great. But I said, here's the reality. Okay. This patient, for them to go find a Medicaid doctor at the Medicaid clinic in Minnesota right now, the wait time for them to get in is about a few months. So for them to wait a few months to then have to go see the doctor, likely, pay some kind of minimal copay to then see the doctor, and then delay their care versus paying $10 right now versus $2, do the math. And the patient wants to pay the $10 right now because that's worth it to them to get their meds right now and not go through months of delay having to meet a new doctor to just simply get the same med refilled to save $8. Pharmacist, and I don't blame the pharmacist, let me be clear. Pharmacist says, I hear you. I said, you make total sense, Dr. Kim. But that's our policy. We can't do it for you. So they can't. So what did I have to do? I crap you not, guys. I had to tell the patient, hey, you know what? I'm sorry I got to make you do this. But we're going to have to send you to some other local pharmacy. I need you to walk in there. And when they say, hey, can I see your insurance card? Tell them, I don't have insurance. And they said, really? I said, yeah, look what happened. This nonsense makes no sense. We are so backwards as a country. I need you to walk into a different pharmacy. Just say, I have no insurance. I got cash on me. Give me the cash price. And they're like, so you want me to go in and lie? I said, yeah. This is pathetic. Yes, I want you to just go in and lie. So they walked into a different pharmacy. They said, I don't have insurance. They said, are you sure? I said, yeah, I have no insurance. And then they were able to get the med for a few bucks, cash. Does this story make sense to you guys? Does this story make sense to you? This is insane. But this is how crazy it could be simply because of arbitrary Medicaid policies. It's total lunacy. This is totally backwards, but this is what can happen. So it's also important to make sure to understand your insurance policy of like, what does the physician have to be in network in order for you to even have coverage, and not deal with what I just described. Despite the fact that this is stupid, to save yourself from this idiocy, you may want to do some homework. Okay. Another reason would be, last couple, You may find out from the pharmacy, say, hey, what's the reason? This time they say, hey, you need a prior auth. And that stands for prior authorization, meaning your insurance plan has some arbitrary rules of hoops you have to jump through, or the doctor has to jump through before you can get this covered. So where you can find these things, I know it's not a normal thing that everyone looks up. It's going to be called your formulary. So you can typically go on your insurance company's website and look up formulary, and they will have like a legend key, and it'll say like covered, prior auth required, not covered at all. And so you can then decipher what's required. And sadly, when they say prior auth, typically, layman person's translation, that means they want you to try a couple other cheaper meds that cost the insurance company less, and try those first before they will authorize this. Or the doctor may need to make a damn good argument and write a long-winded essay and fill out several forms and do a bunch of circus tricks to potentially convince them to circumvent and not have you do those trials and just skip to the med that they wanted you on in the first place. But oftentimes they're going to make you jump through a bunch of hoops before you can even get that authorized. So that's what a prior authorization process is. And finally, then we'll get to the next segment. It just may not be covered, sadly. And I know that sounds insane, but there are instances where an insurance company will just say, there is no hoop to jump through. There is no pathway. We are just not going to pay for this, and we are not going to cover this medication. This is the insanity of American healthcare. So again, quantity limits, different version of the med, okay? Doctor may not be in network, prior authorization, and it's flat out not covered. If you guys have other ones that come up commonly for you, list them in the chat here. Now let's talk very briefly about, okay, so you say, those are great tips, Dr. Kim, but that doesn't apply to me. I don't have insurance. So none of that really helps me. Okay, so let's talk. I know the next few things I'm going to say, they're not revolutionary, but trust me when I say, every week I have so many patients who are not even aware of these resources when they have no insurance. Okay, so if you have no insurance, then yeah, it's really going to take, and again, that may mean it's already hard to see a doctor. If I've no insurance, how am I going to even get the prescription? I get it. But when there's a will, there's a way, and people without insurance still end up seeing the doctor in various shapes and forms, okay? Or maybe sometimes they get the cost subsidized, maybe it's through a sliding scale fee, but let's say you are able to go see a nurse practitioner, a physician, you get a prescription. Now, how do you even affordably get the meds without going overboard in cost? It's challenging, but I would say at least in mental health, I can't speak for other fields, okay? In mental health, rarely, if ever, I would say almost 98% of the time, your physician should be prescribing you a generic medication, okay? I'm not saying never, I just said almost all the time, your psychiatrist for mental health purposes should be prescribing you a generic med. It's very rare. It's very rare, and there's only a few instances where a brand means there is a patent on that med, and only one manufacturer has the exclusive rights to that, meaning it is super expensive. But if it's generic, that means that company who held the original patent has lost its exclusive rights, and now other manufacturers can manufacture generic versions of it, which are way cheaper, typically. So, again, most things in the field of psychiatry, most disorders that are treated with prescription meds do not require brand name meds. The vast majority, 90-something% of the time, almost probably 95, 98% of the time, you can treat them with generics. And I'm not saying compromise, I'm not saying settle for, I'm saying generic meds are going to have almost the same level of efficacy than the equivalent. The rare exceptions are things like esketamine. There's a few postpartum depression drugs that have come out there that are branded, that recently came out. There are a few exceptions, but I would say the vast majority, things for panic disorder, generalized anxiety disorder, clinical depression or major depressive disorder, bipolar disorder, most of the medications for all of these things are generic at this point, okay? Meaning there is hope that maybe then you can afford a generic medication at a relatively affordable price. So now it comes down to practicality, practical skills of price shopping, maximizing discounts, and leveraging any form of assistance program out there. Okay, so I know that sounds very basic, but I am telling you, price shopping is crucial. I kid you not. I have a patient this week. I had a patient this week. They were trying to get something called atomoxetine, which is a generic form of Strattera, which is a non-stimulant medication for ADHD. Okay, so it is a non-stimulant, not like Ritalin, not like Adderall. So it's a non-stimulant, but it is FDA approved for ADHD, and it is generic at this point. Okay, now here's the thing, right? So let's do some price shopping. Okay, and I'm going to show you that this is not hyperbole. Now, many people in America are familiar with GoodRx, and great, GoodRx is great. I always recommend people who don't have insurance or crap insurance, they should check GoodRx to see if they can get a discount using a coupon code or a coupon voucher, right? And so let's use this example as a very good example of the importance of price shopping if you don't have insurance, or maybe even if you have crap insurance. Sometimes, sad to say, cash prices might be lower than what you pay with your insurance. I know that sounds insane, okay? So if you were to look up on GoodRx, here's a graphic here. You type in the medication name, you type in your zip code, okay? And look, these are the range of prices. It looks like you can maybe get a deal here at Target or the CVS and Target for $48.37. Good Lord, look at Walgreens. What the? Are you effing kidding me, right? Talk about price shopping, all right? I didn't even notice that when I was putting up this graph. $347.64, right? So you could see here, like, okay, well, look, my best shot is probably this CVS over here for 48 bucks, okay? Versus the 347 over here, okay? But like I said, don't just check one source. So if you were to go to a mail order pharmacy, these are pharmacies that will receive your prescription electronically and then mail you the prescription to your home. Same medication for a 90-day supply, $26. And I believe this website charges $5 shipping and handling. So $31 for a 3-month supply. $31 for a 3-month supply without insurance. This is cash. This is cash price. Okay. Where if you weren't looking hard enough, even with a coupon, quote unquote, with a coupon, you're still going to be paying on the low end 48 bucks. Absurdly, if you were really not aware, you might be paying 300 something bucks. Okay. This is the insanity that there is no regulation, not even loose regulation of these prices. Once you're in the cash arena of paying cash without insurance, there is no controls. These pharmacies can charge whatever they want to charge. Okay? So that is the importance of price shopping, leveraging, coupons. You got to find, and it's so sad. It's sad that this onus and this burden is on you, the consumer, right? Okay. Now, finally, look, there are going to be patient assistance programs. And again, this is not going to be applicable to everyone, but I'm not going to inundate you, but just as an example, like if you were to go to this website, rxassist.com, you can plug in a drug name. I plugged in something called Trintellix, which is, again, I rarely ever prescribe this because I don't really feel the need to, but this is a brand name SSRI medication used for clinical depression. And they list that, the manufacturer itself, Takeda Pharmaceuticals, has some type of a patient assistance program. They give you at least some of the general eligibility info so that you hopefully don't waste too much of your time. It says patient must not have health coverage, does not have enough coverage to obtain the medication, does not have access to alternative sources of coverage or funding. So, and there is like a federal poverty level, limit of what income level you have to be under. But it looks like, again, there is at least the chance of a pathway to maybe get some assistance. And you know what? You might as well milk whatever these pharmaceutical companies offer to your advantage. You might as well. Okay. So, and again, there are things at the state level, at the county level, at the national level, through private pharma assistance programs themselves. So you got to search, you got to hunt. I'm not going to be able to list every single nuanced thing out there, but do that as well. Do whatever you can. And again, I know that it's a sad state of affairs, that this is the type of guidance I have to give patients. This is the type of education I have to provide, that this is the type of work and the lengths that you have to go through as a patient in order to try to make healthcare affordable. It's just insane. It's insane. So on that topic, again, next segment here is the concept of catastrophic health insurance plans. Okay. Ever since the United Healthcare CEO murder, assassination, it's been a topic that's been just continued to be talked about since that time. Like, how do we start fixing the healthcare system? Obviously, I had an episode where we talked a little bit about how we have to get to the point of healthcare coverage for all, right? Some kind of universal healthcare. And I know I know we have some viewers here. Some of you are from Australia. Some have been from Europe. I'm always fascinated. So if you're hearing this, whether you're hearing this live or whether you're hearing this as a recording, chime in. I really want to hear it firsthand from people who are in other countries where there is nationalized healthcare, a national healthcare system, universal healthcare. Is it good? And is it something that is sustainable? Is the quality good? Is access truly good? And is worrying about when you go to the hospital, whether you're going to end up bankrupt or financially destitute, is that a concern you have, or you don't have any concerns of that at all? Hey, I'm going to go, I'm going to get treated, and I'm going to be fine. And you don't have that paranoia and reluctance to go seek healthcare. Is that the case? Do you have good access? Is it good quality? Does that somehow bite you in the butt on the back end through taxes that makes it untenable? But I really want to hear it. I mean, I always just hear random anecdotes. I hear snippets. I read opinion pieces. But I want to hear it straight from the source. People who are actually living in countries where there is nationalized healthcare, universal healthcare. So if you're here, I know we only have a handful of people on the live stream right now, but if you're hearing this recorded, I want to hear. Tell me about your opinions and if it's working or if it's not working. So in the meantime, knowing that you heard it loud and clear, I don't feel like healthcare should be something we have to see as a privilege. I feel like we should be able to have the comfort as citizens of the United States, one of the most affluent places in the world, that we will be taken care of if we go to the hospital for some kind of, concerning urgent illness, disease, major catastrophic surgery that we would need. To worry about, if getting treatment for an illness is going to ruin our livelihoods, that's just not a way to live. And that is something I am willing to pay more taxes for. And I'm usually vehemently against tax. I tend to be a libertarian. I don't think that government have just so much overreach and overstep into our personal lives. But one of the few things I am rather, moderately liberal on is I just, at this point, after 13 years of seeing suffering and seeing my patients struggle, I feel like healthcare shouldn't be something that we toy with, and mixing business and profit and healthcare just doesn't seem to work. I don't know what to do. And I know that I'm not obtuse. I know that in other countries where there's universal healthcare, I know it's still a two-tiered system. There's still the haves and there's still the have-nots. And even those, the 1%, the one percenters, they have access to resources and specialists and customized care that the lay public do not. I'm not an idiot, but I'm just saying we've got to be able to do better than what we have right now. Right now, it is the Wild West. It is so broken. Why do I even have 51 licenses? We are a single country. That right there is the epitome of how stupid this is. We bemoan and we cry and we complain in the media as the public about how there's such limited access to healthcare, but you're making our physicians apply and have 51 licenses, 51 damn licenses. That's insane. So Leo, thank you. Leo, thank you. A PGY1, Leo. Glad to be talking to a future colleague. PGY1, public healthcare in New Zealand. Public healthcare is very good and accessible. People never think about going bankrupt when going to the hospital. Most of our prescriptions are subsidized or free. Good God, Leo. Okay, so yes, we are screwed up then in America. Thank you, Leo. Leo, you are a PGY1 in what? What type of residency? What type of internship? What are you doing? What field of medicine are you pursuing? Thank you very much for your comment. What are you pursuing, Leo? I'm just curious. When I think there's a delay on the live stream here, but when you hear this, give me some feedback there. So Leo says in New Zealand, public healthcare is good and accessible, and you don't have to worry about going bankrupt. And again, I don't know Leo. I mean, Leo is not a plant. I've no idea, but great. This is the crazy thing. I hear all kinds of stories, but that's a good one. Leo's saying it's pretty good in New Zealand. Man, yeah. So here's the thing, right? Knowing that like what Leo is describing, that's what I ultimately think needs to happen. Okay, so I'm not losing sight of that, but it's really, so Leo, you're doing general rotation for 2 years, but I'm interested in psych. Awesome. Well, psychiatry is a fascinating field. So, hopefully it's something that interests you. And yeah, love to chat in the future. If you ever, have time, send me an email. And if you ever want to talk about psychiatry, I know you got plenty of people there that you can talk to within your program, but feel free to shoot me any questions. That we go to my website and you can shoot me an email and I'll correspond with you, Leo. So just remind me that when you send me an email that you're Leo from New Zealand and we can chat a little bit. I'm always glad to chat with residents and interns. So okay, guys. So Leo is describing what we need in America, but knowing that that's going to take a long time. Tell me what you think about the concept of catastrophic health insurance plans. Okay. I'm not sure that I'm really for it. So I'm just saying, I'm just throwing it out there because I want to hear you, the public, the listeners, people what are your thoughts on this? Because there's so many like finance, MBAs, CPAs, there's even a bunch of physicians who are saying we should just go back to having healthcare being catastrophic coverage, meaning they're saying by having our health insurance, stop paying for like your annual physical to your PCP. You have a runny nose, so you just wanted to check in with your primary care doctor just to be safe. Like they're saying minor things, and that's the scary part. Who's going to be the arbitrary decider of what's minor versus catastrophic, right? So that's already a dilemma. But they're saying, common sense wise, these minor things wouldn't be covered or be minusculely covered, meaning you would have to pay for most of it out of your pocket, or maybe there's a deductible for these minor things to subsidize it. But that when something major happens or catastrophic happens, that after your deductible's paid, that everything's just covered and that you would have peace of mind that it's covered. And then they equate it to, well, that's what happens, quote unquote, with your auto insurance, your home insurance. If your home gets hit by a tornado, that it'll be paid for. Now, my only concern is, well, not only, but one of my concerns is my eyebrows raised because I'm like, well, even in the home and auto insurance industries, it's not like they're always be like, oh, cool, let me just cover the whole thing and pay you for the full value of your car or the full value of the real value of your home versus some generically made up value, arbitrarily made up value, right? I am sure some of you out there have a horror story or two about some auto insurance claim that didn't go your way, some, home insurance claim that didn't go your way, even though in theory you were supposed to have coverage, right? For some terrible outcome with a car accident, with a home incident. And then now we're going to say are going to trust the insurance companies with catastrophic coverage of, our lives and our livelihood, because now we're putting all our eggs in the basket that, because we're going to sacrifice and not have these preventative things, these routine things covered, that somehow we're going to have to hold them accountable, and we should have peace of mind that catastrophic things will be covered. But the theory is, in theory, and I buy the theory, like I get it on paper. They're saying by doing this, right, and not subsidizing everyone's routine care and minor care, that this will drive down healthcare premiums for individuals and families, make better plans that have good catastrophic coverage that much more accessible to the working American. And that's what will reduce cost to some degree. I mean, look, I am one of the few Asians that suck at math. Okay. I mean, in theory, it makes sense to me. In theory, but it's just I have some concerns about who is going to be the arbiter, who's going to be the arbitrary decision maker of what is considered catastrophic and what is not, or what is too excessive and we cut you off. Because what happens with home insurance? You claim too many things, that you need your roof repaired and there's flood damage, and you get kicked out of your insurance, right? It happens. You get dropped from your insurance plan. So how do we put preventative measures for that? Is this truly going to help the working class American, or is this really just going to help the upper middle class and richer folks? And it still screws the working class, right? Because in essence, back in the day, right? I mean, I'm in my 40s, right? But I think this is more applicable to people maybe in the generation above me in the 50s or 60s, if I'm not mistaken, right? I mean, that's what health insurance used to be before the pre-Clinton days, where HMOs became that much more of a thing, and before all these managed care companies and ACOs came around with value-based care, et cetera, that essentially back in the day, it kind of was catastrophic care, right? And that's why, and to some degree, probably why premiums were also I'm not saying that's the only reason, but one of the factors maybe why premiums were lower. But what are your thoughts? I'm just curious. What are your thoughts? And again, you can hear my tone of voice. I have qualms about it. I don't even know if that makes sense. It's probably more just a distraction to sidetrack us not really getting to the real solution of having what Leo is describing in New Zealand, right? And if anything, would probably just be a partial measure. But what are your thoughts? If that were a short-term thing, is that just total lunacy? Does that make no sense? There's no way you would buy in to test out something like that? Or you're like, you could see the merits of this? And especially for those of you who are in business, who are in finance, who are CPAs, does that even financially, is that even in loose theory, does that make sense? You tell me. Or is that just wishful thinking and just a fallacy and a pipe dream and a mirage? So Ray says, my TMS would cost a fortune. Yeah, no, I see. That's my concern, Ray. That's my concern with this theory that a lot of physicians and finance people are throwing out there with articles and stuff talking about this concept. Because, right? I mean, would they consider, like, this is what I'm talking about, right? Would they consider TMS catastrophic, right? Or serious enough, right? That's what I'm worried about, right? Or would they say like, oh, well, why don't you just take your Lexapro and Prozac, Ray, right? Why do you need such expensive TMS, right? And are there going to be these kind of arbitrary forks in the road with even more overreach and overstep, even more of what we were talking about earlier in this episode, prior auths becoming that much more complex, right? So, you're right. I mean, that might, hey, Snicks, thanks for joining again. Snicks is here, Ray's here. We got some of the regular crew. So yeah, that is a concern. Things that are covered now, would they not meet that cutoff of what is considered catastrophic? That is the same concern that I have. So I don't even know if that's really the case. So again, if you're just joining, the question at hand, where I'm just asking for feedback, I don't really even have a solution, is just, does it even make sense for us to kind of go back towards catastrophic coverage only for healthcare to reduce healthcare costs? Is that viable, or that's just ridiculous and that's just a pipe dream and sidetracking us from having healthcare for all, kind of like what Leo is saying is happening in New Zealand? So that's the question at hand. All right. Well, for those of you who've stuck around, we're kind of past the halfway point, and I do have energy. Let's talk about the reactions to the reactions of Mel Gibson, right? So our last episode was a spicy one. It was a spicy one. And Probably, of all my live streams, both live and even post live, just in its recorded form, again, for me, a small YouTuber, I mean, getting 5,000 views on, a live stream that's me, a random dude talking in my home office about Mel Gibson on a Joe Rogan podcast, you could see how many people are searching for febendazole and methylene blue and uh, ivermectin and Dr. Makis and Joe Rogan and Mel Gibson, that even my no-named YouTube channel, this random Asian dude sitting here, pops up on their feed or through recommended videos and suggestions is popping up. Cause that one definitely got a lot of traction. And definitely got a lot of nasty comments and, a lot of insults thrown towards me, which is fine. That's part of the game. If I put stuff out there, if I put my face out here, if I talk and I share my opinion, it's fair game. It's also fair game that I'm going to, probably say something back. So hopefully people are adults and you could see my attitude. I'm willing to have a discourse, right? So let's talk about a few things. So some of the reactions to my reactions and my reactions back to that. So the reactions of the reactions to the reactions. So some of the criticisms that were thrown my way, number one, was that, I should stay in my lane, right? And that I am in the field of mental health. I'm a psychiatrist. I shouldn't be talking anything about febendazole, about methylene blue, about ivermectin. So here's my comment and reaction to that. I never said that I was an oncologist. I never said that I am an immunologist. I never said that I am an expert in those things. But I also know how to interpret basic research to some degree. I know how to interpret and sniff out whether something shows very solid, proven track records with fundamental backing to say that it's safe enough to now be recommending as a treatment versus saying these are preliminary findings. And all I said, and I'm not even backtracking, I'm just clarifying to make it crystal clear to the people who are saying that particular critique of me is, again, for those who actually listened to my last episode, did I ever utter the words that there is no evidence whatsoever, or no promise for any of those things in the realm of oncology or cancer? No, I said, there are studies. I even started, citing and saying there were numerous. But again, my concern is that these are very preliminary studies. Most of these are done intracellularly or in cell lines, not living humans. And most of the articles themselves, most of the findings were, hey, we should probably test this in animals. We should probably test this in humans, et cetera, et cetera. This is super preliminary. We don't know what to say beyond. This should warrant more study. And even me just vocalizing skepticism has really gotten the ire of people who are very on the, very offended by that. And I understand, right? When you are desperate and looking for answers for yourself or for a loved one, you don't want a guy who doesn't know you saying, screw that latest hopeful article or hopeful thing that came out. Okay. I didn't say don't have hope. And if you interpreted it that way, I'm sorry that's the case. My intention is not to say don't have hope. It's just, I don't want to see people hurt even further. I don't want people being sold a false bag of goods. I don't want people being preyed upon with predatory tactics. And I want people to have a healthy skepticism, right? And you have to do your own risk-benefit analysis of, is it worth testing out some of these things, right? I usually don't call folks. I even got voicemails. I even got voicemails from a few folks saying, "Hey, what are your thoughts?" Either myself or someone I know is thinking about foregoing standard of care treatment because they read an anecdote or an article about someone using febendazole. And again, I said, look, number one, I said, I'm only calling. I almost never call back because, again, I can't give direct medical advice. I'm not your physician. I'm not your loved one's physician, but I call back more out of concern. And I said to folks, and I'm not going to name them for the sake of confidentiality and privacy, even though I'm not their doctor, but just out of respect, I said, look, I'm not your doctor. You can't take this as medical advice. I said, you probably want to talk to your loved one, or if it's you want to talk to your physician that's actually taking care of you and say, look, if you have a relationship with that physician, you shouldn't feel afraid to say, hey, what do you think about febendazole? What do you think about ivermectin? What do you think about X, Y, and Z? And hopefully you guys have enough of a rapport where your doctor will just give you their honest thoughts. And I said, I don't know what that response is going to be. They might say, no, look, there's not enough evidence. And they may say similar things like I said. So I don't recommend doing that. Maybe you'll say, hey, look, I've researched it enough myself. There's only preliminary data, but you know what? If we stay within a certain range, they may say they have some confidence that they could add that to your standard of care regimen. Use it as a complement. Who knows what kind of response you're going to get, right? But all I said was, don't solely base your decision based off anecdotes, random social media posts, supposed case studies that are being posted out there. You have to be careful and you have to have some skepticism. Okay. So, that's the degree where, I don't even know these people. And look, I appreciate the fact that they tune in and try to listen to me. I try not to be too crack-headed. I try to be a level-headed person when I'm talking to you guys. I'm not right about everything I say, but I have good motives. I'm not trying to act like a predator or try to take advantage of people. And that's why I actually reached out. I was concerned by their distress and wanted to just say, hey, look, I have some concerns about what you're saying in your narrative. And I just advise that you really seek the sound advice of your personal physician. Okay. Be skeptical, guys. Okay. So here's the thing. Couple other reactions real quick. A lot of comments were saying, I'm part of the conspiracy and I'm just part of the consortium of physicians that are in the healthcare system that want to suppress these miraculous cures. I'm going to be brief here because if that's what you think, there's nothing I'm going to say that's going to convince it. But it's more I want to talk out loud with people who I can talk to rationally about this. Okay. I'm going to say I would say the vast majority of physicians have no interest in somehow trying to sidle up with pharma to suppress a cure. I'm sorry. Okay. Most physicians, they're trying to get through their day. They're trying to practice their craft and their skill set and provide for their families and help their patients to get better. It's a very tiresome argument. And to me, this is an argument used because when you can't produce evidence to back your claims, this is the cop-out response. When someone says, well, show me good evidence that we can utilize these things and that, they're solid, not anecdotes, but solid evidence that we can use these things to truly help people who have cancer. And then the response that you get back is not a response filled with substantive material or evidence. It's, well, there would be more evidence if the whole industry wasn't suppressing the cure and you're part of that conspiracy. To me, that's a cop-out. That is a cop-out answer. The translation of that is, I have no actual valid responses for you. So instead, I'm just going to lash out, talk over you, and invalidate your experience, your credentials, your existence, and say you are a conspirator. That is my response. That is a weak, I'm gonna use the word, that is a weak response. That is a weak response because there's no substantive evidence. There's nothing you have to literally back your point of view. And I'm not saying it has to be a contest. I'm just saying you can't even come up with logical responses. Your only response is I'm part of a conspiracy to suppress the cure. Ray says, just saying at stage 4, who has time for studies? Hence, people will search for alternatives. Ray, I'm not arguing with that, Ray. I'm saying people are going way beyond Mel Gibson's comments. People are saying that these things cure all forms of cancer. Go Google it right now, Ray. I'm saying right now, as we're talking, go Google febendazole, cure for cancer. What are you going to find? Go Google it right now, Ray, or anyone else. It's going to say febendazole for lymphoma, breast cancer, pancreatic cancer, unknown mass, lipoma. So the folks who are promoting this right now, they're just saying this is just a cure-all. There's mass hysteria right now saying this is a cure-all. So my response then is not just for the stage 4 folks that Mel Gibson's referring to. I'm saying, well, what about the early stage 1? What about the ones who just got it diagnosed? What about those who have benign cancers and not the most aggressive forms of cancer, right? Those folks do have time and can participate in studies or have their physicians have the luxury to study them, right? I mean, so this is not just being subjugated. This is not just being relegated to the comments of Mel Gibson. This is go on, and I'm not saying these are really good sources to go to because this is just where hysteria happens. These are rabbit holes. Go on X, go on Reddit, go on Substack. People are saying this is the cure-all for everything. And that's where I'm saying, let's be careful. Okay. And did I say, am I being judgmental saying I'm judging those who decide to try it and adding it to their regimen? No. When did I say that? I just said your oncologist might even say, hey, look, maybe if we do a risk-benefit analysis, what's the harm in adding something like that? I'm not an oncologist, right? But I'm saying that even when I'm lowering the bar, saying, I'm not saying for the stage 4 people, I'm just saying where's solid evidence? Just evidence besides the in vitro studies, the intracellular studies, cell line studies that we kind of quoted last time. Where's the evidence? And there is none. There is none that is being produced right now. Okay. And here's some responses. I'm gonna write this. So I have someone who commented on the channel. By the way, the FLCCC has 3 cancer clinic trials happening now too. So data for what is working will be obtained. They're going to confirm that it's working. So the assumption is it's working, and they're going to confirm, they're going to obtain it. They're going to show you, Dr. Kim, right? Not to rain on that person's parade, the FLCCC is the Frontline COVID-19 Critical Care Alliance. This was formed in 2020, and 2 of the founders have had their board certifications as physicians revoked. A couple of their prominent articles were retracted from journals for plagiarism and falsified data. It's a controversial group that portrays themselves as a rigorous scientific body. It's a group of journalists and physicians, some of whom who've just lost their board certifications, that have banded together, that are promoting dubious conceptions about COVID, about cancer cures. So that's going to be the evidence. This is part of the concern I have. This is the cyclical grifting that happens. You have a group that does not really have the rigorous validity as a group to even be doing this, then churn out some article or 2 of some poorly run study to then have someone else then cite that study, then have someone cite the person who cited the study. I've seen this one too many times, guys. Yet the public don't know because they don't really have the energy or concern or time to waste, like I do, I guess, to actually sit here and dig a little bit. It doesn't even take much digging. Go dig around about the FLCCC. Doesn't take much. And then you can go on to state medical board websites and you could look at some of these folks that are part of that. It doesn't take much research, guys, right? I'm just saying be careful is what I'm saying. I know we want to believe in things and I know we want to have hope. I'm not saying don't have hope. Look, I worked in clinical research. I worked as a principal investigator. We were testing things we had you have to have faith. You have to have hope. And sometimes you do have to take risks. I'm very familiar with the concept of risk. So that's why I'm saying I understand for those of you out there who may want to try these things, who end up doing them. And again, just make sure you are trying your best to get as much informed information from good sources the best you can. And for those who are really active in pushing these things and making it sound too good to be true, just have some skepticism about those particular sources. That's all I'm saying, guys. Just got to be careful out there, okay? That's all I'm saying. I'm not saying shame on you for trying these things. I'm not saying that one day maybe it's going to be. I have no clue. I'm not an oncologist. But you know what? I've had several people reach out to me also saying like, well, how do I get in touch with that Dr. Makis guy that was referenced on the Joe Rogan show? Here's all I'm going to say. If you even go to several of his social media profiles, it's going to say he's an expert oncologist, expert immunologist, expert radiologist. He was, he's a radiologist. And yeah, he specialized in nuclear medicine. And you then can be involved in the care of cancer patients, but that doesn't make you an expert oncologist. That doesn't make you an expert immunologist. Those are already red flags there. And again, I'm not saying that you can't learn about other things in other fields, but it's just, again, I've seen this pattern too many times. When people self-proclaim themselves as experts at everything, just be a little leery, guys, okay? And yes, people say, well, look at his timeline and look at his Substack and look at his X account. And you're going to see things like this. Febendazole success story for a patient sent home to die from esophageal cancer. All right, just take a look. Here's another one. Put them side by side. Testimonial. 60s-year-old Florida stage 4 clear cell renal cell carcinoma patient with multiple recurrences, now cancer-free after 3 months. Again, my role here, I'm not trying to crap on people's stories and narratives. Look, if you look on even my comment section for the previous live stream, someone there shared that, he took, unless I'm misquoting him, took febendazole, which helped with rheumatoid arthritis. It cleared up some lung lesions, saying his doctors weren't even sure what happened, and etc. My response was, I'm glad for you. I'm happy that you're doing better. I mean, was my response, no way, that's false. There's no way that could. No, I have no idea. I don't know any details about his case. I'm glad he's doing well. Whether it was febendazole, whether it's febendazole combined with something else, who knows? I don't know. I'm just glad he's doing better. I'm glad he's alive. That's my response. That's a normal human response. I'm just glad you're doing better. Now, the issue is, right, people like that physician who is really pushing this narrative right now, he's doing what that commenter is doing, just throwing out anecdotes. Now, for the person who actually lived through it and is telling me that, saying this is my direct experience, who am I? I'm not going to argue. That's their life experience, and that's what happened. But for someone who proclaims to be, an expert and is the one pushing a lot of this, they're the ones pushing this. You got to do a little bit better than random anecdotes. Posting anecdotes of news headlines that you find somewhere else and you're reposting them, that's not science. That's aggregating headlines and anecdotes and posting them and feeding off trends and hysteria right now, right? So it's just, you got to be careful, guys, okay? Just because it says physician at that person's name and they're reposting headlines that are very hope-filled, an aggregation of headlines and titles being posted by a physician in itself doesn't equal evidence. So that's all I'm saying. Is just be careful. Be careful, guys, okay? Just, I've already had people reach out. I don't even want to get into it because, some loser out there is going to accuse me of saying something. But, there's people asking for money to get access to certain protocols, all these different things. When there's fear and when there's desperation, sadly, there's going to be money to be made. And finally, right, it's another argument. There was another category of comments that were coming in. It's just like, if pharma were to, acknowledge that these things were cures, it would make them go bankrupt because the motive is to keep people sick and just keep charging for chemo. Okay. That to me is just as bad as the response of the earlier thing that the doctors themselves are part of suppressing this cure. Like I said, if you're not familiar with pharma, like the pharma industry, they know no bounds of getting creative, of how to make a profit. Okay. I gave you the example last time, and I'm going to reiterate it, right? I mean, one of the newest medications in psychiatry out there is something called Auvelity. It is generic bupropion, which retail, I'm not saying wholesale, I said retail, you can get for like $10 a month. And dextromethorphan, an over-the-counter cough suppressant. Where is the huge margin? Where is the profit to be made there, right? There's no incentive. They're generic. That's the argument there's no incentive. There's no incentive because febendazole so cheap, ivermectin so cheap. There's no incentive. Yeah, well, there was no incentive for those generics that are cheap that 10 manufacturers can make. What do? They're like, well, let's just put dextromethorphan and bupropion together in one tablet or capsule, and let's just call it Auvelity. And now let's charge $900 a month, $1,000 a month. And that's what they did. And the FDA is like, cool, got a new drug. So trust me, if there's promise, if there is real scientific promise and validity, someone is going to run with it because they're going to do what I just described. They're going to say, hey, let's mix ivermectin with proprietary blah, blah, blah. Let's actually get it FDA approved, and then insurance will now pay for it at this absurd price, and we will charge insurance companies $900 a month for this. They'll pass the buck to the consumer and we'll raise insurance premiums, blah, blah, blah. It's just the same shell game over and over. So trust me when I say, like, if these things are going to show promise, someone, I'm not even saying creative in a good way, I'm saying creative in a greedy way, will use their creativity. They will capitalize on this and say, well, if it works, it works and we'll profit off it and we'll make a ton of money and let's ride this wave of hysteria, right? So that's what would happen. That's what would happen. So again, I don't really think that the whole, oh, there's no profit in this or else it would be studied if there was. I don't really find that holds much merit. It just takes motivation. Forget pharma. You're telling me if this is truly the next cure, that people who are anti-pharma, anti-government, anti-human health services and NIH, you're telling me there's not enough of these people? Enough people could band together and figure out private capital equity fundraising, Kickstarter for all I care, GoFundMe for all I care, and you can get the money to do some legitimate research. You don't have to, if you're not even going to go through standard fare pharma FDA clinical trials, you don't have to spend $200 million. You're telling me if this is really the cure, that enough invested people, like, why don't you get Mel Gibson? Why don't you get Joe Rogan? Why don't you get each of their friends to donate $500,000 a pop? You're telling me there's not enough celebrities who are interested in ivermectin and all stuff who couldn't donate. Forget themselves. If they all donated $50,000 a piece and then they had all their followers on social media donate $5 a pop, you're telling me that they couldn't raise 8 figures to raise $10 million for some starting rudimentary research? Like, that's what I'm saying. Then do it. Do it. Stop with the excuses. Stop with the excuses that it's the Illuminati of healthcare. Let's see the action. Joe Rogan himself could bankroll this, a small study, a reputable, legitimate study. Or with his influence, he and Mel Gibson, with their influence, they can get enough investors to invest in it. It's not rocket science. You have startup biotech companies being founded by MIT dropouts, people who are like, I'm so smart, I don't even want to finish MIT or Harvard or Yale. And dropouts are getting enough private equity funding to start biotech companies that become multi-million dollar companies that become subsidiaries of pharma. So you're telling me dropouts from college can do it, but the aggregated power of all these influential people who are promoting this, they can't do it. BS. BS. Absolute BS. Absolute BS. Who would stop them from who would stop them from running a private research study? Give me a break. Absolute joke. That kind of excuse is an excuse. That's an excuse. Cop-out excuse. I'm sorry. And I'm sorry that I know I'm getting a little pissy right now. It's just that's ridiculous. It's this fallacy of logic, right? Stop crapping on it, but I don't have to prove it. No, you have to prove it. You have to prove something to me and show me some evidence. I didn't say we need, phase 3 clinical trial. Just show me something. Just show me something beyond a case study or an anecdote. And I'll be blunt, not even the best anecdotes and case studies, really. I mean, there's a way to do a case study correctly, and there's just kind of loose, random case studies. And I'm sorry, there's not even really good, well-documented ones so far. So all I'm saying is, it's just, guys, none of the hate mails and emails were even very compelling. I'm sorry. Even if there was a really good one, I'd love to just have a back and forth discourse and just have a civil conversation. Ray has a comment here. Ray says, it seems like there hasn't been a breakthrough drug for depression. Nothing really new since Prozac. More depression now than ever. Yeah, there hasn't been really, Ray. I mean, I would say it's like, even look, here's the thing, Ray, right? Here's the sad commentary in the field of mental health research. IV ketamine, we talked about this in one of the IV ketamine's not even FDA approved. And IV ketamine really has been probably one of the biggest breakthroughs in treating depression, right? And then finally the nasal spray version, came out, but ketamine has really been the first breakthrough, I would say, honestly, in like 3/4 of a century, right? So to your point, Ray, everything up until ketamine and ketamine-based derivatives has really just been a variation of the monoamine hypothesis, right? Monoamine meaning like serotonin or epinephrine, because back in the day, I mean, if you go back to my direct-to-consumer marketing episode live stream about how insane it was that like drug companies are marketing heroin and amphetamines, right? Which shows you. So I'm not trying to be a hypocrite, right? I'm also saying I said be skeptical of everyone. I'm saying skeptical of all these anecdotes, skeptical of Dr. Makis, skeptical of pharma too, right? If you blindly put your faith in the pharma industry, right? What did we say in that episode with the direct-to-consumer marketing? They were selling heroin. They were selling cocaine candy, right? I'm not making that. Remember I showed that advertisement for cocaine candy for your kids? They were marketing cocaine to kids. So back to your point, amphetamines were a treatment for depression pre-World War, right? So, and what was that? Again, monoamines. Those were dopamine, norepinephrine based, norepinephrine dopamine modulators, right? Then we had MAOIs, dopamine, serotonin, norepinephrine. Then we had tricyclic antidepressants, which were basically SNRIs, and every single tricyclic was a variation. Some were more SSRIs, some were more NRIs, and some are SNRIs. That's tricyclics. Then we had the advent of fluoxetine. Actually, Luvox was out first, but fluoxetine was first to market in America. But fluoxetine, Luvox, sertraline. Then the SSRI theory came, which is just a variation of tricyclics. Then the 90s, we had duloxetine or Cymbalta, venlafaxine, which were SNRIs. And everyone's like, oh my God, look, SNRIs, dual-acting antidepressants. And I'm like, well, we had dual-acting. They're called tricyclics, right? So we're recycling the monoamine hypothesis for decades, right? Almost a century. So you are correct, Ray, right? So we went from peddling, speed and meth amphetamines to the monoamine hypothesis. Now we're branching out into ketamine and GABAergic drugs. Now we may be going into psychedelics, psilocybin. You even mentioned TMS. So TMS and ketamine probably have been the only real true novel breakthroughs in the last half century. And then maybe, like we talked about in another episode, the psilocybin maybe will kind of be a next step. But you're right, there hasn't been a lot of progress. And part of it is there was a fascination with being a Me Too drug, right? And what I mean by Me Too, and this is going to be relevant to circle back to these cancer theories. Me Too drugs are like, you know what? Look, rather than taking a huge risk, right? Let's just make the 8th or 9th iteration of an SSRI. Let's just make a minor tweak. Let's not branch out too far. Let's try to do something minor, build off the existing research, and hope that we are different enough that we can then, get a new exclusive patent, right? Which is why we have so many variations of SSRIs. Some of that is just from being risk averse, right? They didn't want to take a gamble, invest millions of dollars to have a failed trial. But here's the thing, right? Part of that is about repurposing to some degree. It's not exactly the same thing. You're building off other foundational research. But what I'm saying with repurposing is we already have pharmacokinetic and pharmacodynamic research for ivermectin, for methylene blue. We have data for febendazole, right? Obviously, probably more in animals, et cetera. But we have foundational pharmacokinetic, pharmacodynamic research already, meaning knowing that those exist, you don't necessarily have to repeat the breadth and depth of like these phase 1 trials, meaning like You don't have to redo the very rudimentary building block pharmacokinetic and pharmacodynamic studies. Like that research already exists, meaning it then even shortens the timelines to then study it for the specific clinical disease states that you want to research it for. So even this idea about like, oh, it's just going to take too long, it's going to take forever. Yeah, I'm not saying it wouldn't take long, but you would actually already have a shortcut. You already have foundational research of pharmacokinetics and dynamics and toxicity to some degree for some of these meds that you can skip part of the steps. You even have a shorter path than something that is being researched from scratch. So again, excuses. Don't tell me about the funding. Don't tell me about length of time. You even have a shorter pathway. You can repurpose the data that already exists for foundational pharmacodynamic and pharmacokinetic studies. You can repurpose it, have a shorter pathway. Don't tell me you can't find funding. BS. Nonsense. So let's do it. Let's do it. I'm just saying be careful. All right, that's all I'm saying, guys. I don't want to become repetitive here. But anyways, usually I don't go back to recycle material, but you know what? It was worth it to me because look, so many people had so many things to say, via email, via whatever, comments, reaching out to me on social media, DMs, etc. I'm ready to have a conversation. I'm willing to have a reasonable conversation, right? I got a bunch of people who gave me their own personal stories, and I said, okay, that's cool. I said, I appreciate you sharing for me. And I had follow-up questions. I said, tell me a little bit more. It's for my own human curiosity. I'm willing to listen, and I value people's experiences. And what did I respond to these individuals? BS, your stories BS. No, I said, okay. I said, that is a cool story. And I said, I'm glad that you're doing well. And not in some patronizing, I'm listening, I'm soaking it in, I'm just learning a little bit more. I have follow-up questions. Some people are willing to respond back to me just to give me more information. Others just wanted to kind of throw it out there and never say anything back. And that's all I get to hear is the initial salvo of information. So like I said, man, I'm here to just talk with you guys. I'm willing to have conversations. But it's fascinating. It's fascinating. What I've learned is just how... I knew it was there. I have my own criticisms. I have my own skepticisms. But man, I think I underappreciated the level of... And maybe it was naive of me. I'll say that the degree of mistrust and suspicion and the conspiracy concepts out there about, the healthcare systems, whether it's about physicians themselves, about the infrastructure of healthcare hospitals. Again, some of it is warranted. I'm actually not defending all of the system, but some of it almost just kind of fuels this frenzy of hysteria, unfortunately. So even with our skepticism, there's got to be a balance of skepticism. But anyways, guys, so we've gone way beyond because it's lively. So any other last minute comments? Take going once, going twice. I'll give it a minute and then I'll respond. But any other last minute comments and open forum Q&A time before we wrap up? And for those of you who are here, I appreciate you for sticking through. And I know that was a 15, 20-minute rant, but it is what it is, guys. Sometimes, I'm human and I got things to rant about too. And I appreciate you guys tuning in. But any other last minute comments? And for those of you regulars out there, Ray, Snicks, everyone, I appreciate you. For Leo from New Zealand, thanks for tuning in. Like I said, shoot me an email, Leo. If you have any other questions about day-to-day and psychiatry, etc., happy to respond to you. So Leo, thank you for tuning in. Thank you for your comments about New Zealand's healthcare system. All right, but if there are no further comments, then we'll probably wrap things up. But again, join me on Saturdays and Tuesday nights, 10:30 Central, 11:30 Eastern. And I'll try to put a few more evergreen videos out there. Maybe I will also talk about TMS in one of my upcoming videos. A lot of people still have questions about that, Ray, so some people aren't as familiar as you are with that, but probably put something about that out there. I still remember that some of you wanted to hear about prolonged kind of benzo withdrawal. I know there's more and more questions coming up these days about prolonged recovery from sexual side effects of SSRIs even after discontinuation. Still a little bit of a controversial topic. So things like that are still on my to-do list. So if you stay tuned, those will either come out as evergreen videos in the upcoming future or will be a topic on one of our upcoming live streams. Thanks again for tuning in, guys. This is Dr. Andrew Kim. Have a good night. Try to get some sleep, you insomniacs. But subscribe to my channel, and I will catch you guys on Saturday for the next live stream. Have a good one, everybody.